multiple reports. Detroit is set to hire the former Nets coach Lawrence Frank. During 6.5 seasons, Frank advanced to the second round of the playoffs 3 straight seasons in New Jersey. He spent last season as Doc Rivers' defensive coordinator in Boston. If the deal works out, he'll be joining a Pistons team ranked dead last in opponents' field goal percentage, so that works out. Once a student manager under Bobby Knight at Indiana, Frank also had the distinction of beginning his tenure in New Jersey with 13 straight wins and wrapping it up with an 0-16 start to the 2009-2010 season. For more, let's bring in David Aldridge from NBA.com. And David, what will Lawrence Frank's priorities be in Detroit, where they're clearly in transition roster-wise?
Well, I think, he's a defensive guy, Matt. I mean, that's what he does. And, they probably don't have the personnel right now to play defense the way he wants, but they've got a couple of intriguing pieces. So going forward, I think he can, try to instill a defensive mentality there. He's big on not giving up open threes. He wants to keep the paint clean, and it's a priority of his, and he's always wanted to do that. And in New Jersey, with a team that did not have, superior personnel, they managed to win some games his first couple of years there. Now, once Jason Kidd left, that changed everything. But now they're he's going to have a much younger team in Detroit that he's going to have to try to instill that in. That's difficult, but not impossible.
D.A., do you see Lawrence Frank changing his coaching philosophy? To me, the Pistons need scoring. They were 22nd in the league last year in scoring. They need to score to win ball games. Yes, he can play. He's a defensive-minded coach, but he also needs to bring an up-tempo and more of an offensive style, too.
Well, no question, Matt, but coaches are who they are. They don't usually change. What they believe in is what they believe in as a philosophy, and he has always been a guy that stressed defense, that emphasized defense. No question the Pistons are going to have to score more, depending on the personnel moves they can make after the lockout ends. I mean, they may have a different-looking team, but, right now you would think that it would be better for them to score, but I don't know that they have the personnel to score enough points to win games because I don't think that they're that good offensively. But, in New Jersey, he ran a lot of two-guard front. I mean, he did some things creatively to get other people to basketball. So I think that he can do that, and a lot will depend on the assistant coaches he brings in because I'm sure he's going to lean heavily on his top assistant. Most people think Brian Hill might wind up being that guy to come up with an offensive scheme.
So the coaching search wrapping up in Detroit. It continues in Minnesota, where the irrepressible Larry Brown continues tossing his hat into the ring for coaching gigs. The latest target is the Timberwolves, who are still looking to replace Kurt Rambis. Brown will reportedly interview with team president David Kahn, who he's known since Brown coached at UCLA when Kahn was a student reporter at the newspaper. That's a long-standing relationship. Stay close to the phone, folks. You, too, could be next on the Timberwolves' growing list of coaching candidates, including Rick Adelman, Bernie Bickerstaff, Mike Woodson, Terry Porter, and Don Nelson as well, happens to lead all coaches in coaching victories. Back to D.A. now. And D.A., what is Minnesota looking for in a coach?
Well, I think credibility is the number one thing. I think with a very young team, they're going to have to get somebody in there that has some credibility as an NBA head coach, somebody that's won at a fairly consistent level. And all of those coaches, with Terry Porter being the exception, all of those coaches have had good stretches where they've won a lot of games. So I think that's the main thing. You can talk about philosophy and all that stuff, but you have to get those young guys to play and to believe in what you're selling. And they're talking to some very successful coaches, and I think it is an indication that people recognize that there is some talent on that team. And a lot of these coaches, they didn't think they were going to talk. Adelman would agree to talk to him, and he did, And Don Nelson obviously has been lobbying for the job. So a lot of coaches with a lot of wins want to try and coach that young team and that young personnel because they do have some talent there.
D.A., I agree with you that they need to bring in a veteran coach for this young team, but don't they also need to bring in a coach that's going to be there for more than 2 years, maybe 3 years? Larry Brown, I don't know how many years he's got left. Yeah,
that's a fair point, Matt. I mean, it's not, my guess is that, with the Timberwolves right now, it's hard to really plan more than 2 or 3 years in advance. I mean, they seem to change their personnel an awful lot, and I don't know that you can really plan to say we're going to have a guy come in here for the long haul, because they tried that with Kurt Rambis. I mean, the whole point with giving him a 4-year deal was they were going to let him grow, they were going to let him develop the talent, because they wanted a long-term solution. I think after a certain period of time, you got to start winning some games. I mean, you've got to start selling your fan base on the notion that you can compete and make the playoffs. And I think I think their desire is, yes, they're a young team, but they need to jumpstart this process. They can't take another 5 years to kind of develop the young players they have, and maybe in 5 years they'll have an opportunity. I mean, they got to kind of hit the ground running, and I think with the lockout that puts even more pressure, and it makes it even more important to hire a coach that knows what he's doing and isn't learning on the job. So that's why I think they're going the veteran route.
Hey, D.A., Mike Woodson seemingly interviews for all these vacancies and keeps coming up short, despite a track record that was pretty good here in Atlanta, turning things around with that young Hawks team. What, if anything, is keeping him unemployed as a head coach right now?
Well, I think it's a shame. I really do, because I think, Mike Woodson did a terrific job with, again, a very young team in Atlanta when he got there a few years ago that had no discipline, had no concept of how to play as a team, and improved that team every year he was there, and got them, to a place they hadn't been, making the playoffs. And for some reason, he doesn't seem to get any credit for that. And I think it's kind of ridiculous that he can't get another head coaching job. I mean, I think the Detroit job, frankly, I believe that the new owner there was probably more impressed with Lawrence Frank than Joe Dumars was, because everything I had heard was that Mike Woodson was going to get that job. He was Joe Dumars' choice, and I think this was the case with the new owner coming in and maybe wanting to put his own stamp on it, and maybe overruling Joe on that. Because I think Mike Woodson would have been perfect for that young team. There's a lot of similarities between that personnel group and the Hawks personnel group. He would hope he would get a look in Minnesota, but there's an awful lot of guys there with real good resumes, and you can't say they would be wrong if they hired Larry Brown or Rick Adelman or Don Nelson. I mean, you can't say they're wrong, So, you would hope that, somewhere somebody recognizes the job Mike Woodson's done the last few years.
D.A., do you think Mike Woodson would ever consider being an assistant coach again, like he was with the Pistons under Larry Brown and even with the 76ers under Larry Brown? Yeah,
I think so. I think there's a chance of that. I mean, you've already heard his name kind of mentioned with Boston and Doc Rivers, because they need Doc likes to have that defensive guy. It was Tom Thibodeau 2 years ago. It was Lawrence Frank last year. So they have that opening there. So I think it's conceivable that Mike could wind up maybe in Boston. I know that they're going to look at Roy Rogers too, but Roy Rogers might go with Lawrence Frank to Detroit, so that might be open. But I don't think Mike is averse to that. I think that whether it's there or somewhere else, I could see Mike getting there. I think the Phoenix job was there, but Mike was obviously thinking he might get the Toronto head coaching job or the Detroit head coaching job, and Phoenix subsequently filled it with Elston Turner to be the defensive guy for Alvin Gentry out there.